Greg Branos for the Coachspeak Index. What's up? What's going on, people? Week 17, championship week. Your boy GB is officially out of bullets in Underdog's Best Ball Mania 5. A longtime Coachspeak Index follower tweeted at me last week and said, "Hey, you're in my semifinals pod." And then he went on to win it. Thanks to that long Devon Achane touchdown run at the very end of that Dolphins-Niners game. So I want to wish best of luck to Vandy Burger, who is one of 539 teams left out of 600 plus thousand, has a shot to win $1.5 million. Kyle, I hope you win it, buddy. I love hearing about all of your teams that made it to different best ball contest finals and league championship games. I love seeing those Devon Achanes and Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurins and Brock Bowers. Good luck to all of you this week. Now, if you think that this is the end of fantasy football this year, my friend, mi amigo, mon ami, you are wrong, because we have playoff best ball that is drafting right now on Underdog Fantasy. $200,000 to first place off of a $25 entry. That deserves a platonic woof whistle, if ever anything did. And you can sign up right now on Underdog with promo code Coachspeak to claim a first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash, plus a free pick'em. The link to that will be in the description. Got a lot to cover today. We will start off with injuries, and we're going to try to blaze through this because there's a lot. 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan said Isaac Guerendo is day-to-day with his hamstring. He's trending in the right direction. Hopefully, he'll be good to return to practice Thursday. Shanahan has an 80% reliability rating on Injury Coachspeak. I expect Isaac Guerendo to suit up by week 18 with a chance to play this week. Seahawks head coach Mike McDonald said that Zach Charbonnet was limited during their week 16 game, but signs are positive with him right now. Commanders head coach Dan Quinn said it's absolutely possible that Austin Eckler returns from his concussion this season. He's definitely trending in the right way. We're certainly optimistic. Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon said, "We'll see how James Conner goes throughout the week. I know he wants to play. We'll do what's best for him first, and then what's best for the team." Gannon also said, "If players are healthy enough to play, they'll play. We're going to play whoever gives us the best chance to win." The Cardinals, of course, are eliminated from playoff contention. Gannon also said if James Conner and Trey Benson are out, Michael Carter would get a lot of carries, I'm sure. Also, by the way, left tackle Paris Johnson Jr. and right tackle Jonah Williams will be out this week, and they are actually out for the remaining 2 games of the season. Panthers head coach Dave Canales said there's a possibility Xavier Leggett will play this week. Leggett dealing with a hip. Bengals head coach Zach Taylor said T. Higgins is good. Higgins dealing with an ankle. Taylor said we'll just take it day to day and see where he's at. Same with Orlando Brown. We'll start working him back in. Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski said Dorian Thompson-Robinson is working through a calf injury and that he'll have updates as we get through the week. Stefanski said, "I'm hopeful, and he will start this week if he's healthy." Stefanski also said that David Njoku suffered a knee injury in week 16. Don't have a ton of updates there. We'll see how he comes through. Had an MRI this week. If he can play, he will play. Stefanski also mentioned that Cedric Tillman is still making his way through concussion protocol, and we'll see how it goes. Lions head coach Dan Campbell said that David Montgomery is optimistic with a couple of doctors that he saw. The last two, Montgomery got 3 opinions. Campbell said, quote, "I think we may see where this thing goes. We still got a decision to make," end quote. And Campbell said it certainly sounds more optimistic. Montgomery dealing with a knee. Packers head coach Matt LaFleur said there's potentially a chance we'll have Christian Watson this week. We got good news on him. It was more just a bruise from when the guy fell on him on the sideline. We'll see how he practices this week, and we'll see where we're at. Chiefs head coach Andy Reid said that Isaiah Pacheco dinged his ribs in the Christmas Day game, and we'll see how bad they are. And finally, the Chargers open J.K. Dobbins' 21-day window on Tuesday. All right, let us get into some Coachspeak clips. We are going to start off here. This was after week 15, and offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt. This was a big deal, the whole Gerard Mayo thing of they had a 3rd and 1 and a 4th and 1. They were stuffed, and reporters asked, why didn't you use Drake May's legs? Why not use Drake May? Why not do a QB sneak? Why not call some design runs for Drake May? And Mayo kind of threw Alex Van Pelt under the bus a little bit. And this clip is Alex Van Pelt a few days later saying that he would call design runs for Drake May if the Patriots were in the playoff hunt, but that is not a risk that he's willing to take with 3 games left. Here's the clip.
Alex, you mentioned keeping Drake healthy for these last 3 games and out of harm's way. And with the design quarterback runs and things like that, if let's say the record was a little bit different, would you say that would invite calling those a little bit more?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no question. If it's 3rd and 2 and we're trying to get to a playoff spot, then we're going to use every means necessary to get those plays and put our guys in the best position. But, I've been around the quarterback run game in Cleveland, and we lost our quarterback for the year. And so I know what it entails. I know what comes with that. There is a big risk that's involved. And again, if it's a playoff situation or it's a got to have it to win the game, possibly. But when that comes up, we'll make that determination.
Okay, and then in week 16, the Patriots called some design runs for Drake May. And this is what head coach Gerard Mayo had to say in the post-game presser when asked why they did that.
Gerard, we saw Drake, run a little bit more by design today, sneaks, things like that. What made today the day that you guys wanted to do that?
For us, we thought that was best for the football team, and he can make plays with his legs, and he did that today.
Why was it best for the football team?
We're always looking for ways to win.
Okay, little turnabout face there for the Patriots. This all coincided with Diana Rossini's report that Gerard Mayo's job was in danger if the Patriots didn't show some signs of competitive life over the last 3 games of the season. And we remember those shots of Robert Kraft's son in week 15 bemoaning the offensive play calling, saying that it was terrible. So at least one of the higher ups in this organization had a conversation with Alex Van Pelt and let him know that his job was in danger. And then all of a sudden, everything he said about not wanting to run Drake May went out the window. Running backs. This is before week 16. Offensive coordinator Matt Nagy talking about how a split workload between Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt is good for the backfield and for the team.
Obviously, in the backfield, you've got a couple of guys that you have a lot of faith in, but how do you manage that, so that at the running back spot, they talk about the feel and needing touches, to really get into it. How do you manage that going into the postseason? Is it a just truly split backfield between those two, or do you try and make sure you see if one can get the hot hand and go with him?
It's a good point because they both bring kind of a different type of play style to us, and then the other guys too. I mean, I'm talking about with Pops and with Kareem, they're different, and then you throw P Ryan in there, and Carson. There's a lot going on. I think there certainly is a little bit of a feel. It might be for those guys too. I think they understand it. It's probably good for both of them as we get going here and our team in the fact that they're fresh legs. So when they are in there, it's not like they're getting 27 carries a game and they're wearing down physically. It's not easy. I can promise you that it's not. And I think Coach Pinkston does a really good job of being able to try to balance that. And then it's our job as coaches, Matt, to make sure that, let's just say, I mean, we can all put ourselves in a position. Let's just say you're the guy that's not getting as many carries. We got to make sure that you understand, hey, man, you're a big time part of this. Your time's coming, and it could flip from game to game. But we're in this thing together, and they know that at any given point in time, they could be the guy on 3rd and 1, or they could be the guy on 3rd and 10 that has to make a catch to help this team win. And I think the selflessness message is the most important, and those guys absolutely have that.
Since Isaiah Pacheco returned in Week 13, none of the running backs in this Chiefs backfield have seen more than a 48% snap share. And that is certainly not what you were drafting Isaiah Pacheco for in fantasy this season. Obviously, you weren't drafting for him to miss, I think, 9 games with an injury. He had 80% snap rate in the first game, 66 in the second when he got injured, and comes back to a split backfield. A little bit of a three-headed monster, mainly Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, who they really like quite a bit. Kareem Hunt knows this system really well. He's not the most efficient runner, but they like him. And sometimes a coaching staff just really likes a player, and that guy gets a lot of run. And that is what is happening with Kareem Hunt. We're also seeing Samaje Perine get a decent amount of snaps, usually in the 20% range or so. Definitely a lot of the long down and distance stuff. So that hurts to not get that receiving work if you're an Isaiah Pacheco manager. It has been a really bad run out for Isaiah Pacheco this season. Let's go to another backfield that is surprisingly kind of split as well. This is Buffalo, and here is head coach Sean McDermott on his running backs.
Josh, you mentioned something good. When you guys need a play, Cook goes 40 plus for a touchdown. He's up, I think, 14 this season. I mean, that's a big number. What's his consistency meant for this offense this season?
It's been huge. When he is angry and hungry, he runs like it. You can tell. So that's really true for all of our backs. You saw Ty come in. Ray had a couple good runs, and they compete with one another. You should see the looks in their eyes when one guy's getting the good runs, the other guy's pissed off, and he looks at me. He wants to get in there and slaps my hand really hard, right? Instead of just giving me a normal high five or whatever. I get it. Those guys are competitive and they compete with one another. It's a good thing, quite honestly. They can slap my hand as hard as they want. Just go out there and run angry.
I love this image of the running backs on the sideline, all just constantly slapping Sean McDermott's hand, like, get me in there, coach, let me in. Well, okay, you just got to slap his hand. You got to tag team your way into the game, and you get in. James Cook has not played more than 45% of snaps in any of the last 5 games, and yet he has put up some pretty nice numbers, especially over the past couple weeks. 11 carries for 100 yards and a touchdown last week. He also had a receiving touchdown on 3 catches, 26 yards. A couple weeks ago, 14 carries, 105 yards, another touchdown. Sorry, a couple touchdowns on the ground and had a reception for 28 yards. Ray Davis getting involved. Ty Johnson being very involved. We saw him go over the 100-yard mark in receptions and receiving yards a couple weeks ago. So it's a very kind of hold your breath proposition with James Cook in fantasy. Like, do you play him or not, knowing that he's not going to get a ton of snaps? He's not going to play, at least recently, if that's any indication. He's not even going to play a majority of snaps, not even over 50% of snaps here in this backfield, but very efficient on his touches. A little bit of what we've seen with guys like Bucky Irving, right, who don't get a ton of volume, but when they do touch the ball, and they're touching the ball on offenses who are very high-powered offenses, and they have the ability to rip off some big runs. So obviously a guy like that, maybe you should be playing them a little bit more, but at least they're not going to be relegated to the bench for a lot of the game. It's a little bit scary if you have him in your lineup, but the ceiling with him is so high. I mean, you're sick to your stomach if you leave James Cook on your bench and then you see him put up, 30 plus fantasy points. Pretty good matchup this week against the New York Jets. So if you're in a championship game, obviously you probably have a pretty good roster. You might have a tough decision of, do I play James Cook or not? It's relative, of course, but he's got a pretty good matchup this week, and he's running the hell out of the ball. All right. New England Patriots. This is head coach Gerard Mayo on whether he is considering starting Antonio Gibson over Ramondre Stevenson after Stevenson had a couple fumbles last week.
Sherrod, specific to those turnovers, the last time we saw Ramondre have a little bit of a run of fumbles, we saw Antonio actually start a game the next week. Is that something that you'll have to put under consideration this week?
Look, I think everyone understands how important the football is, and we're a team that we just can't turn the ball over. I don't think any team can really afford to turn the ball over. I thought Gibby, when he got in there, did a great job. And look, we had to go back and talk about it as a staff, but that's definitely still a possibility. And I will say this, we all in this building stand behind Ramondre and the things that he does. A lot of good things. Unfortunately, right now, the ball's just on the ground too much.
Tough spot for New England. Gerard Mayo really hates turnovers, especially from his running backs. We saw Ramondre Stevenson fumble the ball in each of the first 4 games this season. And then he was in for 47% of snaps in the week 5 game. And it's a real dilemma for them because, first of all, they paid Ramondre Stevenson a bag of money this offseason and talked about him, how he's their workhorse. Gerard Mayo is saying that. Offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt saying that as well. And then you have all these fumbles, and Ramondre Stevenson has had a history of struggling with ball security, but he's a better running back. He's a more explosive weapon. He's a bigger threat than Antonio Gibson is. So do you put Antonio Gibson on the field, who has had his own struggles with ball security? Or do you just kind of ride out Ramondre Stevenson here, who you're paying. But again, your job is possibly on the line if you don't show out well over this last stretch of games. So it will be very interesting to see the split between Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson this week. Wide receivers. Let's start out in Seattle. And this is before the Week 16 game. This is offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb talking about DK Metcalf's 3-catch, 28-yard, 0-score outing in Week 15.
What are the conversations like for you guys in terms of balancing, taking advantage of the attention DK gets to help other guys versus realizing he needs the ball?
No, that's a great question. It's a weekly balance, right? DK is a weapon no matter what. I mean, that's the thing that, we're lucky that he has such a positive demeanor, and he's just he's a stud. Just the way he goes about it when he gets that much attention and frees up other people to get the football. But at the same time, we're always working to try to get DK the football. And last week, this was probably the first time after the game on the next day where I talked to him, and I really, it bothered me. It pissed me off that I couldn't get him the ball more. And a guy like that, you just gotta find ways to get him the football. And it doesn't matter if they're clouding him or what they're doing. We obviously are always making a, very, very. We're trying to get the big guy the ball, and we will. He's a stud. We'll find ways.
And talking about clouding DK Metcalf, this is something that we've heard from Seahawks head coach Mike McDonald, talking about how teams are clouding him, playing, one on the line and one high on him. And that's why Jackson Smith and Jigba has been so productive this season, is that, hey, if teams want to double up DK Metcalf, then we're just going to kill him with JSN. In Week 16, Metcalf, again, 3 catches, but this time on 7 targets instead of 3 targets, 57 yards, finds the end zone for a score in the first half. I believe he was catchless in the second half. And not only is the way that teams are playing DK Metcalf affecting how much he's able to get the ball, but the offensive line is playing a really large part in his production this season, because Geno Smith has not had time to throw the ball downfield to where they like to get the ball to DK Metcalf. We're seeing more, of the shorter and intermediate stuff, because that's about all the time that Geno Smith has to throw the ball. So I think in 2025, we're going to get a really nice discount on DK Metcalf, and I think we'll get a discount on Kenneth Walker as well. And what I'm going to be looking for is, does Seattle improve their offensive line? Do they target that in the draft? Do they make a real effort and bring in some guys in free agency? Because this is a real problem for this offense. This is not even close to the ceiling that Seattle's offense has if they were to have an even just like a decent offensive line. Because what they have right now is awful. It's terrible. You have to give your quarterback time to throw. Geno Smith, over the last couple of years, the best quarterback in big-time throws over 20-plus yards. And that's an area of the field where DK Metcalf really feasts. So this year, we're seeing Decaf Metcalf as a result of this offensive line. And again, if they improve that this season, that would be a very underrated storyline. People love to approach fantasy football just looking at box scores, stat lines, and really just removing all kind of context from things, right? We saw that with Jameson Williams this year. It's like, oh, look what he's done the first 2 years. Okay, well, let's look at the context of this situation, right? Same thing with Rashad Bateman. Let's look at the context here. Jameson Williams was unable to see the field because of suspensions, injuries, And, with Rashad Bateman last year, he was out for training camp. It's the first year of Todd Monken's install in Baltimore. Wasn't able to get on the same page with Lamar Jackson, but we know that he was a really good receiver. We can see that with how often he was able to get open last year. We can see that by looking at the tape. We can see that by subscribing to Matt Harmon's reception perception and knowing how good Rashad Bateman is at getting separation. Also, looking at the last, I believe, 6 games or so of reception perception last year with Jameson Williams, where, okay, this guy, once he got into the offense, once he got into the flow, we're seeing what he's capable of. So I preach context all the time. Let's remember this. Let's remember this for 2025, that in 2024, this Seattle offensive line was certified ass. It was terrible. And it did not allow them to reach their ceiling. It did not allow them to unlock all parts of the field. The deep part of the field is not unlocked if your quarterback doesn't have time to throw it deep. All right. Green Bay Packers. This was before week 16. This is offensive coordinator Adam Stenavich on Christian Watson becoming a major cog in the Packers' offensive death machine.
What do you think of what you've gotten out of Watson lately? I don't want to keep.
It's been awesome. His explosive plays have just really propelled this offense. And it's been kind of weird because you're like, some of these games you're like, wow, we had this many yards and we only had 45 plays or 50, whatever it is. But then you look at it and you're like, wow, Christian had, 3 plays over 40 yards or whatever it is. So it's great. Anytime you can get those explosive plays lead to points. And, that's the next to protecting the football. It's getting explosives in the NFL is what leads to points. So, yeah, it's been awesome.
Those plays correlating to Josh Jacobs getting going early in the games and the
well, yeah, I mean, everyone, like, once you get those plays, everyone kind of gets fed. So it's been really nice having Christian make those plays down the field, and I think it scares the defenses too. I'm sure he's one of the big concerns is his vertical stretch down the field and making those big plays, which opens up the underneath stuff for everyone else.
Christian Watson, a classic better and best ball player. He's a threat any given week to go over 100 yards and score a touchdown. But in managed leagues, it's really tough. Even if, hey, this is a really good spot for Christian Watson this week, everything kind of lines up for him. Well, how much is Green Bay going to run the ball? It's probably going to be a lot, unless it's against a really, really excellent run defense who's able to shut them down. But he adds this explosive element to their offense. We see his separation score this year, how good it's been, that he's had now that he's had a pretty healthy season, got dinged up here in week 16. They use him on jet sweeps and use him out of the backfield as well. So tougher to play, tougher to roster in a managed league, but in best ball, this is a guy who in the fantasy best ball playoffs could be one of those dudes that you need, and his price not super expensive. I believe he was going right around like the late 80s or so, early 90s picks in best ball. It is this fantasy whack-a-mole game with the Green Bay wide receivers, which is why maybe diversify your portfolio and have a Green Bay Packer wide receiver on your best ball teams. We know how much Matt LaFleur rejects the idea of a wide receiver one. He says that it makes him want to vomit, but they have some real threats in Romeo Doubs, in Christian Watson. obviously in Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks to some extent, but all very talented players, and they all sort of have this contingent value of, okay, if something happens to one of them or if something happens to a couple of them, then we're going to see, some more. We'll see these targets kind of concentrated among those guys who are left. Again, good best ball picks who absolutely all of them are able to really help you win in one of these big playoff weeks. Let's move it on down to Kansas City. This clip is before week 16. This is offensive coordinator Matt Nagy on what has led to Xavier Worthy's consistent productivity.
Hey, Matt, I wanted to ask you about Worthy. What have you seen from him in recent weeks that's allowed him to become a more productive, consistently productive player?
Confidence, and the game is slowing down for him, Adam. It reminds me so much of Rashee last year. It's crazy how much it reminds me of that same type of avenue that Rashee went through last year. It was a little slow for the first 4, 5, 6 weeks. And then weeks like 7, 8, 9, 10, you can sense it. You might not see it in the stat book, but you can sense it as a coach. You can sense it from watching tape. And now all of a sudden, you naturally see more targets. You see more touches. You see more production. It's exactly what happened with Rashee. And I'm telling you, it's crazy how, similar it is. And it's exciting because you see what Rashee came into this year, what he did early on. And I think that's the path for this kid.
Hey, Matt, wanted to ask you about something you said about Worthy earlier. You said around week 7 and 8, you could sort of sense that it was coming with him, even if you couldn't see it. How did you sense that? Like, what told you this kind of thing? He was expanding as a player, even if you weren't getting the results.
Sure. So I'd say number one, Adam, he was getting lined up without mistakes, breaking the huddle and going to where he's supposed to go confidently. So some guys jog out of the huddle and they're thinking as they run to the line of scrimmage. He knew right away where to line up in the plays. That's the first part. The second part is within the play, you could tell that he was running his route with speed and getting to that spot because he knew how to get there, where to go, and what to do versus that defense. Prior to that, there was probably more thinking. So the route might have been where he's supposed to go and be, but it wasn't quite as crisp or as fast. The third level of this now with him, Adam, is what we're feeling and what we're seeing. And part of this is on the sideline too, is his own confidence and understanding that even if he doesn't get the ball, he might get open, or if he runs a route and gets covered, he learns from that. And he's coming back in between plays and drives and having reps in practice to where he's understanding what it takes to be a successful wide receiver in this league. And that's staying on time, playing fast, and then making the play when the play is given to you. And he's done a phenomenal job at that. And I think that's the biggest thing that we feel is just that. So now just continue to keep doing it here as the speed of the game, as we move forward in the playoffs, everything's faster. So it's even going to pick up from what he's been seeing.
A Rashee Rice comp from Matt Nagy. Andy Reid in his week 16 post-game presser was asked about Xavier Worthy, and he said, quote, "When they start making the little subtle adjustments on routes and not just running lines, that's when you kind of know that they're heading in the right direction. And he's been doing that." End quote. We saw Xavier Worthy tear it up once again in the Christmas Day game. He's seen at least 6 targets in each of his last 6 games. Over his last 3 outings, 31 total targets plus 8 rushing attempts. And he scored a touchdown in each of those 3 games. He is a big part of what KC is doing on offense. It's not just the downfield shots anymore. And imagine if they started connecting on those on top of this Rashee Rice usage. For his 2025 outlook, Hollywood Brown is on a 1-year contract, right now, so he'll be an unrestricted free agent. Travis Kelce is old and slow. He is dial-up internet. He's prodigy. He is net zero. We may see a version of the 2023 Chiefs offense in 2025, but instead of Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce paper-cutting teams to death, it's Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, where we get some of those deep shots to Xavier Worthy mixed in there. Could be a really exciting 2025 campaign for Xavier Worthy, and very curious what his ADP will be next season. One final clip here before we get to some items from the Coachspeak Index Discord. And this is interim head coach of the New York Jets, Jeff Ulbrich, on Garrett Wilson.
Jeff, we asked you yesterday about Garrett. You said, you got to look at the film. Like, when you went back and looked, did you see that there were more opportunities for him to get the ball?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we got to find ways to get Garrett the ball more often. He's one of the best players on our team, if not one of the best players in this league, especially at his position. So the progression, for a lot of different reasons from a coverage standpoint, took him off Garrett. But at the same time, we got to find ways to get him the ball, for sure.
When you have a player as good as he is, who is very obviously frustrated, I mean, he's made that pretty apparent over the last couple of weeks, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, just got to keep manufacturing looks and touches and targets for him. You have to, and putting him first in the progression as often as we can, and ultimately try and find ways to get him open, get the ball, But guys are all right. He absolutely is a guy that we need to find ways to get the ball more often too.
Not so much from an X's and O's perspective, but just more on the human level, like talking to Garrett, and do you talk to him about that, or try to ease his frustration, or like just on a one-on-one level?
Yeah, I think if he weren't frustrated, I think that would bother me, to an extent. I think he's just one of those ultimate competitors that wants the ball, not for selfish reasons, just from the standpoint he knows he can help our team win if he does have the ball in his hands. So from that standpoint, of course, there's going to be a little bit of frustration just when we lose, because he always feels like he's the guy that can win the game for us. So, I think, especially to this point, I think he's utilized that frustration to really push himself to be better in every single way, and as long as he continues to use that as motivation, it can be a positive.
It's a very small sample size, but Jeff Ulbrich has been pretty reliable with his player usage Coachspeak. We hear him saying there that got to find ways to get him the ball more often, putting him in first in the progression as often as we can. Ultimately try and find ways to get him open to get the ball. The wrench in this equation is that it's the last day of school for Aaron Rodgers. The Jets are out of playoff contention. He's hanging out with his boy Devontae Adams. Complaining about lack of targets may work with a head coach to get that squeaky wheel greased, but Aaron Rodgers could not give less of a shit about other people. The universe that Aaron Rodgers lives in revolves around Aaron Rodgers. This doesn't mean that Rodgers will outright refuse to throw the ball to Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is still a very good receiver. He's still getting open, and when that look is there, Rodgers will throw him the ball. But I'm not banking on Garrett Wilson getting force-fed targets all of a sudden just because he is complaining about targets here. Okay, let us dip into some of the nuggets from the Coachspeak Index Discord. This is where I put everything of note from every press conference, head coach, offensive coordinator, general manager. It is 30 plus hours worth just of video of these press conferences, about 160 per week. And just a tiny fraction of the stuff makes it to Twitter, and everything else, everything of note again, goes straight into the Coachspeak Index Discord. Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady said that you see James Cook's confidence that is now being put together with the knowledge and the understanding of the scheme. He's understanding how offensive linemen are approaching blocks and where these balls are going to hit versus certain fronts and defensive structures. He spends a lot of time with our offensive line coach in these run game meetings and just making sure that he sees it the exact same way. He has the ability to take it to the house when he gets to the second level. He's playing confidently. He's playing with a mindset. He's playing with physicality. When the ball's in his hands, good things are happening, whether it's the run game or the pass game. Brady was also asked whether Amari Cooper's recent snap count in the 50% range is what Brady wants Amari Cooper's role to be. And Brady said it's always going to be a week-to-week thing. We'll go with the personnel groupings that we think will give us the best chance against a particular team. We're trying to find different ways to win football games. We don't sit there and say, hey, it has to be this certain amount of snap count. It's going to be different from game to game. He is all about the everybody eats thoughts. Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski said that Jerome Ford continues to make big plays for us, both in the pass game and in the run game. He continues to give us a spark. Stefanski also said it's no secret that Jerry Jeudy is a huge, huge part of our offense. So it goes without saying that we want him to touch the ball more. Cowboys offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer said that Kevontae Turpin is the guy that you just want to get him the ball. You can throw it to him, screens and different things like that. You want to hand it to him. He's not getting as many chances in the return team, so therefore, here's a guy we know we have to get involved. Broncos head coach Sean Payton was asked whether Audric Estime has opened the door to more opportunities going forward. And Payton said, quote, yeah, I think he has. I think he played well. I was encouraged with the physicality he ran with, and I think he'll only get better. So I was encouraged. Even Blake had some carries that were encouraging. So balancing that is going to be important for us here down the stretch, end quote. That Blake there is referring to Blake Watson. Sean Payton has a 50% reliability rating on usage and workload Coachspeak. We can't really trust whatever he says about that. We have heard him time and again throughout the season talk about, got to get more opportunities for Audric Estime. And we've heard him say it's hard to feed three backs. It's, you can feed two backs. It's hard to feed three backs. And then last week against the Chargers, we see him using four backs. We see him using Audric Estime and Javonte Williams and Blake Watson. And we also see Burton getting touches there. Lions head coach Dan Campbell was asked whether he will change his approach to their Monday Night Football matchup with the 49ers if the Vikings beat the Packers on Sunday and make that outcome of the Lions' Week 17 game meaningless. Campbell said, I'll make this easy for everybody. We are bringing everything we've got to this game, and we are playing. I don't care what it looks like. We're going out to play and win this game. Man, how can you not love this guy? Packers head coach Matt LaFleur said, if we get to that point where our playoff position is locked, then reducing Josh Jacobs' workload is a conversation. Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel was asked what went into Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. getting work over Jalen Wright. McDaniel said you're trying to stay connected with your locker room and the individuals and the way that they're practicing and the natural competitive spirit that's brought out by playing against former teammates of yours. The Dolphins, of course, played the 49ers last week, who Mostert and Wilson both played for. McDaniel said, I wanted to give those guys an opportunity and see what they did with it. They seized the moment. Raheem played very well and was hard to tackle. I thought Jeff did a phenomenal job when given the opportunity. On top of that, Devon Achane had one of his best games since he's been here. McDaniel said it was a matter of circumstance. Jalen Wright is well aware that it's not if, but when any given week could be his opportunity, so he has to be prepared. And then finally, McDaniel said, with Jeff Wilson Jr., there are certain types of concepts that he has a really, really good feel for, especially in short yardage situations. McDaniel said, quote, I think Jeff's built for that. I think he executed it in a phenomenal fashion and gave us more reason to incorporate him in different ways this week, end quote. And finally, Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell said that Sam Darnold has shown some tremendous growth in off-script playmaking. I don't think he gets enough credit for his athleticism, both short area and the amount of ground he can cover when he does move. That's been impactful all season. He is managing the situation of each individual play and knowing when he can be more aggressive than not. That comes with time in this offense, and he's been lights out over these last few games. Okay, that is going to wrap it up for us. We will have another episode next week, week 18. There are some wonky little leagues who have week 18 games. Also, we have playoff best ball. Also, there's just going to be things to talk about like we did in this episode for 2025 to keep in mind, and then also things that will help with betting some NFL props. So check us out on Twitter/X at Coachspeak Index, also on Blue Sky. And why don't you head on over to the Coachspeak Index Discord, $5 per month. You will get all of these nuggets and more, like every single important note from every single press conference. I grind it for you. I listen to all of it, so you don't have to. And subscribe, like. We will see you next week. Thank you for hanging out. Sarah, take us out.